The gym was buzzing with energy, a mix of excitement, sweat, and anticipation. Fans packed every corner, cameras flashing, phones raised high. Today was supposed to be just another sparring session, a showcase of skill, strength, and ego. But no one, not a single soul, expected what was about to unfold. The champion, a young MMA fighter known for his arrogance as much as his knockout power, strutted into the center of the mat. His muscles rippled under the bright lights, his grin wide and cocky. He was the king of this gym, the undefeated sensation everyone admired, and he knew it. Trainers and students alike whispered, "Watch him, this is going to be a show." Then he saw him. Steven Seagal. Calm, silent, his old jacket slightly worn but neatly pressed. Jeans, simple sneakers, and that familiar calm in his eyes. No flash, no showmanship, just a man who moved like he belonged in the moment and yet, somehow, was above it. The champion laughed under his breath. "Seriously? That's him? That old guy?" he muttered to a nearby trainer. The crowd didn't notice yet. Most were too busy hyping the champion, but a few seasoned observers felt the weight of the moment. There was something in Seagal's presence, an unspoken authority, a quiet command of the room that made the air feel heavier. The champion bounced on his toes, hands raised, ready to strike. He wanted a spectacle. He wanted the glory of taking down someone legendary. The crowd sensed it too, anticipation crackling like static electricity. Everyone was waiting for the clash, for the humiliation, for the headline-worthy moment. Then, in a heartbeat, it happened. The champion lunged, a powerful swing aimed at Seagal. The sound of impact echoed in the gym slam. The crowd gasped, phones flashed, trainers shouted. Steven Seagal barely moved. His calm, unreadable face never flinched. The champion's grin faltered, just for a split second, as disbelief flashed in his eyes. He had expected fear, shock, pain, anything but this. The gym went silent. All the chatter, the cheering, the confident banter gone. Every eye was on Seagal. Every heartbeat seemed to pause, and in that stillness, the unspoken question spread like wildfire. Who really has the power here? What happened next would leave everyone in that gym, and every person watching, completely speechless. The gym still buzzed with a strange mix of tension and excitement. People weren't talking loudly anymore. The usual energy had been replaced with a quiet, almost fearful anticipation. Even the trainers, seasoned veterans who had seen countless fighters come and go, were staring at Steven Seagal with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. This wasn't just another celebrity appearance, this was someone whose presence seemed to command the room without a word. The champion, a man named Marcus the Titan Hayes, tried to shake off the confusion. He was used to dominating his opponents, to being the center of attention. And yet, in the presence of Seagal, his usual bravado felt flimsy, almost childish. He flexed his fists, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, trying to regain control over the situation. "All right, old man. Let's see what you've got," Marcus said, his voice a little higher than usual, tinged with nervous laughter. "You think you can step in here and, I don't know, teach me a lesson or something?" Seagal didn't respond. He stood silently, his calm demeanor radiating confidence. His gaze was steady, almost hypnotic, and it seemed to measure Marcus from head to toe without judgment. There were no theatrics, no intimidating gestures, just quiet awareness. The crowd began to murmur, their phones capturing every second. A few seasoned fighters and trainers leaned in, sensing that this moment was not going to end the way Marcus expected. "Don't underestimate him," muttered one coach to his colleague. "That guy, he's seen it all." Marcus laughed, trying to mask his nerves. "All right, enough staring. Let's do this," he barked. He twirled his fists in a casual show of confidence, like a predator circling its prey. Marcus had spent years honing his skills, perfecting his strikes, mastering his grapples. In the gym, he was untouchable, or so he thought. The trainers marked the boundaries of the sparring mat, and the gym cleared a path around the center. Seagal stepped forward slowly, placing his feet firmly on the mat. Every step seemed deliberate, controlled, and somehow effortlessly balanced. His movements were minimal, yet precise, like a coiled spring ready to respond at the perfect moment. Marcus lunged forward with a series of fast punches. The crowd gasped, expecting Seagal to flinch, to stumble, to defend in some overdramatic fashion. But Seagal didn't flinch. Not even once. Marcus's fist sliced through the air where Seagal's face had been moments before. It was a near miss. Yet Seagal's calm gaze never wavered. For a brief moment, Marcus froze. The champion was used to reactions, to resistance, to opponents panicking under pressure. But here was something different, a presence so serene, so unshakable, that it seemed to absorb his aggression without effort. The gym grew silent. Phones hovered mid-air, cameras focused, and trainers whispered among themselves. "He's not moving like a normal fighter," one said. "He's reading him, anticipating him. This is mastery." Seagal finally spoke, his voice low and measured. "Strength is not in striking first. It is in knowing when to move and when to stay still." Marcus laughed nervously. "Sure, I get it, old man. Philosophy class over here. But can you handle a real hit?" Without a word, Seagal shifted his weight slightly. A subtle movement almost invisible to the untrained eye. Marcus didn't notice, and he launched a powerful swing, aiming directly at Seagal's jaw. The gym collectively gasped. This was it, the moment that would define the clash. And yet, even in this moment of peak aggression, Seagal's expression remained unreadable. Calm, patient. He didn't dodge dramatically. He didn't block with a flashy technique. He simply adjusted, just enough, to redirect the force of Marcus's punch. The strike landed, but not as Marcus expected. There was no dramatic knockdown, no exaggerated fall. The energy of the punch was absorbed and deflected subtly, almost imperceptibly. Marcus stumbled slightly. Not from pain, but from disbelief. His confidence was shaken. For the first time, he was facing someone who couldn't be underestimated. The crowd erupted in whispers, some in shock, some in awe. Phones continued recording, capturing every detail. Trainers leaned closer, exchanging glances that said more than words ever could. "He's real," one muttered, "and he's teaching the young lion a lesson he won't forget." Seagal stepped back, his calm aura unbroken. He didn't gloat. He didn't show aggression. He simply waited, watching Marcus process the unexpected outcome of his attack. It was in this moment, the quiet stillness, that the young champion realized he was not the predator he thought he was. He was merely a student in the presence of a master. Marcus's arrogance began to crack, replaced by a mix of confusion, respect, and curiosity. He wanted to fight, to prove himself, but he also wanted to understand. And as the gym held its collective breath, one question lingered in the air. What will Seagal do next? The answer would shock everyone and leave an impression that no one in the gym would ever forget. The gym was dead silent. Every eye was locked on the center of the mat, where Marcus, the Titan, Hayes, and Steven Seagal faced off. Marcus's chest heaved as adrenaline surged through him, but a creeping unease had replaced some of his usual confidence. He had come here expecting a routine victory, a story he could brag about to fans. But now, uncertainty gnawed at him, subtle yet undeniable. He bounced lightly on his toes, circling Seagal, fists raised. "Come on, old man," he spat, trying to provoke a reaction. "Show me what you got. Don't just stand there looking like a statue." Seagal remained calm. His posture relaxed but alert. His eyes tracked every micro-movement. Marcus made the tension in his shoulders, the shifting weight, the slight twitch of his fists. He didn't speak. He didn't taunt. His silence was heavier than words. The crowd held its breath. Phones hovered mid-air. Even the trainers who had seen it all before leaned forward, whispering to each other. "I've never seen anyone just absorb a punch like that," muttered one. Marcus lunged again, faster this time, throwing a combination of jabs and hooks, each one more aggressive than the last. He was relying on speed and raw power, the weapons that had never failed him. But Seagal didn't dodge theatrically. He didn't swing back with brute force. Instead, he shifted his body with precision, redirecting Marcus's momentum. Each strike landed, but not in the way Marcus intended. His energy seemed to dissipate into the air, leaving him off balance and slightly winded. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. "Did you see that?" one fan whispered. He's just moving like water," Marcus's face twisted in confusion and frustration. "What the?" he muttered, his fists tightening. He had trained his whole life to control the fight, to dictate the pace. And yet, here he was, reacting instead of acting. Every punch he threw was met with calm precision. Deflecting, redirecting, absorbing. He couldn't land a clean hit. And the more he tried, the more off balance he became. Sweat dripped from Marcus's brow, and his breathing grew heavier. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. He was not just facing a skilled fighter, he was facing someone who seemed to anticipate his every move before it even happened. The old adage, control the fight, control the mind, had never felt more real. Seagal finally moved deliberately, stepping closer with measured grace. "Strength without control is meaningless," he said, his voice low but carrying through the hushed gym. "Anger does not win fights. Awareness does." Marcus sneered, but there was no heat behind it. His confidence was cracking. He threw a wild roundhouse kick, hoping sheer aggression would overwhelm Seagal. But again, Seagal's calm, almost lazy shift of weight caused the kick to glance harmlessly past him. Marcus stumbled, nearly losing his footing. The crowd gasped. Phones flashed, capturing every moment in slow-motion disbelief. One trainer muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "He's breaking him, without hitting him. It's like psychological mastery." Marcus, red-faced and panting, tried to regain his composure. He raised his fists and lunged forward again, slower this time, trying to plan, to think, but every micro-movement he attempted was already anticipated. Seagal didn't need to strike. He simply guided Marcus's energy, redirecting it so subtly that the young champion felt exhausted without ever landing a blow. Time seemed to stretch. Every second was heavy with tension. Marcus swung, missed, stumbled. Seagal stepped closer again, his calm intensity a magnetic force drawing the fight toward inevitability. The young champion's arrogance was fading, replaced by awe and fear. The crowd, sensing the turning tide, began whispering frantically, "He's teaching him without striking." Cameras recorded reactions, wide eyes, open mouths, disbelief at the masterful control of Seagal. Then, in one fluid motion, Seagal moved. Not aggressively, not violently, just precise. He caught Marcus's last punch mid-air, guiding it aside effortlessly. Marcus lost his balance completely and fell to the mat. Not hurt, but stunned. The gym erupted not with mockery, not with cheers for violence, but with astonished applause and whispers. Seagal stepped back calmly, eyes softening just slightly. He extended a hand, not in mockery, but in respect, letting Marcus catch himself. The message was clear. The lesson wasn't punishment, it was awareness, mastery, control. Marcus sat on the mat, chest heaving, staring at the calm figure before him. He had expected dominance, glory, victory. What he got was humility, and a lesson he would never forget. Every spectator, every trainer, every fan knew in that moment. This wasn't just a fight. It was a demonstration of power beyond strength, a mastery that came from calm, awareness, and precision. And in that heavy silence, one question lingered. What will Seagal do next? The answer would shock the gym, leaving every person in that room completely speechless. The gym was vibrating with a strange energy now, not the usual excitement of punches and kicks, but something heavier, almost electric. The silence after Marcus, the titan, haze hit the mat was deafening. Fans, trainers, and students all stared in disbelief at the figure standing calmly in the center of the mat. Steven Seagal didn't raise his fists. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Every eye in the room was on him, every mind trying to process what had just happened. Marcus sat there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. He had never felt this way in the ring, never faced someone who could bend his aggression so easily, so subtly, without force. Confusion and awe warred in his eyes, a mixture he had never experienced before. For a moment, the arrogant champion who had strutted in with a grin now looked small, vulnerable, and completely unprepared for the reality in front of him. Around the gym, the crowd began murmuring, whispers swelling into audible awe. "Did you see that?" one fan asked, voice shaking. "He didn't even hit him. How is that possible?" A group of trainers stepped closer, leaning over Marcus. One of them shook his head, incredulous. "I've trained fighters for years. I've seen champions topple legends, but I've never seen someone control an entire fight like that without throwing a single real strike." Even the fans filming on their phones were speechless, their fingers hovering above the record button as if unsure they were witnessing reality. Some of them replayed their footage, eyes wide, mouths open. Every frame seemed to contradict the laws of combat they thought they knew. Marcus, still sitting on the mat, tried to regain his composure. He wiped sweat from his brow and pushed himself to his knees. His fists were still clenched, his pride wounded, but his mind raced with questions. How had Seagal anticipated every move? How had he absorbed every strike without so much as flinching? And, most importantly, what did this mean for his own identity as a champion? Seagal, as calm as ever, took a step back, letting Marcus regain balance. He didn't smirk, didn't scold. His presence alone seemed to carry the weight of decades of mastery, years of discipline, of calm in the storm, of control that transcended mere strength. The contrast was stark. Marcus, young, fiery, impatient, struggling to understand. Seagal, silent, composed, unshakable. The trainers whispered among themselves, their words barely audible over the collective gasps of the crowd. "He's not just a fighter, he's a master," one said. "He doesn't just react, he reads the energy, anticipates, and guides it. This is beyond technique. This is awareness." Marcus finally stood, legs shaky, fists lowering. He looked up at Seagal, the realization dawning slowly. For the first time, he saw a version of strength he hadn't encountered before, one that didn't rely on aggression or brute force, but on presence, control, and respect. Some of the fans began clapping slowly, unsure if they were applauding a victory or simply acknowledging mastery. Then, one by one, the claps grew louder, until the entire gym erupted in a chorus of awe and admiration. Cameras flashed, phones recorded, and even the most skeptical spectators couldn't deny the moment's significance. The gym owner, who had been watching quietly from the back, leaned forward. "I've seen champions come and go," he muttered to a nearby assistant, "but I've never seen someone command respect without throwing a single punch. That's something else entirely." Marcus finally approached Seagal, his usual arrogance replaced by humility. I underestimated you," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was ready for anything, but you're different." Seagal nodded slightly, a faint smile crossing his face. "It's not about who's stronger or faster," he said. "It's about awareness, control, and respect. You fought with pride, but pride without understanding can be your downfall." The gym continued to buzz, some still whispering, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Even the veterans fighters who had faced countless opponents felt the weight of the lesson just witnessed. Phones were still recording, fans replaying every microsecond, sharing clips, commenting. "This is insane. How did he do that?" And yet, for all the chaos, Seagal remained calm. He hadn't celebrated, hadn't gloated. The reaction around him was enough, the realization of his mastery spreading through every corner of the gym, every shocked face, every whisper of admiration, every recording captured was part of the lesson he had imparted without ever needing to strike with intent. Marcus sank to the mat again for a moment, taking it all in. This wasn't humiliation. It wasn't defeat, in the traditional sense. It was something more profound, a confrontation with real mastery, a lesson in humility, and a demonstration of power that transcended physical strength. And as the gym slowly began to regain its usual rhythm, one thing was clear. No one here would ever forget what had just happened. The young champion had been tested, the crowd had been awed, and everyone had learned something valuable about strength, control, and respect. But the story wasn't over. There was still one more lesson waiting, the ultimate revelation that would leave everyone truly speechless. The gym had started to buzz again after the astonishing display of skill and control. But the energy was different now, electric, reverent, and full of curiosity. Everyone was still processing what they had just witnessed. Marcus, the Titan, Hayes, who had entered the gym brimming with arrogance, now sat on the edge of the mat, chest heaving, mind racing. He was a fighter at the peak of his career, undefeated in countless matches, And yet for the first time, he felt completely outmatched, not in strength, but in mastery. The murmurs of the crowd swelled into louder whispers. "Who is he?" some asked. "How did he do that?" Phones continued recording, capturing every stunned face, every moment of disbelief. Trainers exchanged glances, knowing this was more than just a sparring session. It was a demonstration of something rare, something beyond martial skill. And then, the unexpected happened. The gym doors burst open, and a hush fell over the crowd as a team of executives, security personnel, and a few well-dressed assistants hurried inside. They carried folders, documents, and the unmistakable air of authority. The spectators looked on, mouths agape, as the newcomers made their way straight to Seagal. "Mr. Seagal," one executive called out, his voice firm but respectful. "We've been waiting for you. Everything is ready for your review." Marcus's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" he muttered under his breath. "You mean, that's him?" "Yes," another executive said, stepping forward with a file. "You're looking at the new majority owner of this gym chain and the main investor behind the entire MMA federation that oversees this region." The gym erupted into shocked murmurs. Phones were raised higher, flashes went off, and whispers spread like wildfire. "The man who just dominated Marcus owns this place?" Marcus stood, completely dumbfounded. He looked at Seagal, then at the executives, then back at Seagal. His mind raced to reconcile what he had just experienced with the reality unfolding before him. He had thought he was testing a veteran fighter, maybe even proving himself, but instead, he had faced someone with decades of experience, mastery of the craft, and now astonishingly control over the very institution in which he trained. Seagal finally spoke, his voice calm and measured, cutting through the murmurs. "I came here today to observe, to spar, and to understand the energy of this place, but I also wanted to see the character of those who step into this gym, especially the young champions who think strength alone defines them." The gym fell silent again, the weight of his words settling over everyone like a heavy curtain. Marcus's pride, which had fueled him for so long, began to crumble. The realization hit him fully. Strength without understanding, without awareness, and without respect meant nothing. Seagal continued, his gaze softening slightly as he looked at Marcus. "You have talent, Marcus, but today, you learned that mastery is more than power. It is control, patience, and humility. And these are the qualities I value most." Marcus swallowed hard, his voice shaking slightly. I underestimated you. I thought this was just a sparring session. I didn't realize." He trailed off, overwhelmed by the truth in Seagal's words. The crowd watched, captivated. Some were nodding, some were shaking their heads in disbelief, and some were cheering softly, as if applauding the lesson itself rather than the fight. The executives had gathered around, quietly acknowledging the dynamic shift in the gym. They weren't here to supervise, they were witnessing history. Seagal then turned to the staff and trainers. "From today forward, respect and discipline will be the foundation of this gym. Those who demonstrate humility and dedication will rise. Those who rely solely on ego will face their limitations." Marcus, finally processing everything, dropped his head slightly, the lesson settling deep into his bones. He had faced a man who could have humiliated him further, dominated him completely, and yet had chosen instead to teach through presence, control, and guidance. One of the older trainers, who had observed Seagal quietly all along, leaned in to whisper to a colleague, This is the kind of teaching that lasts a lifetime. Marcus will never forget this day." The gym slowly began to erupt in applause. Not for a knockout, not for brute force, but for mastery, awareness, and the profound lesson they had just witnessed. Phones continued recording. Fans posted clips online, and the story began to spread even as it happened, because moments like these, raw and genuine, were unforgettable. Seagal, calm and composed, finally walked toward the exit. The executives followed closely, paperwork in hand, ready to begin their work. As he passed Marcus, he offered a subtle nod, an acknowledgement of understanding, respect, and the promise of growth. Marcus watched him leave, a mix of awe and newfound humility etched on his face. He realized something essential. Today was not about victory or defeat. It was about understanding that true mastery and true respect transcends mere strength. And for everyone in the gym, the lesson was clear. Arrogance is temporary. Mastery is eternal. The gym was no longer the same. The energy that had once been filled with noise, arrogance, and the predictable bravado of champions was now transformed. Silence had settled like a heavy but meaningful curtain, broken only by murmurs of awe and respect. Marcus, the Titan. Hayes sat on the edge of the mat, his fists resting loosely on his knees. Still trembling from the realization of what had just occurred, he looked up at Seagal, who now walked calmly toward the gym doors, followed by the executives and assistants. The aura around Seagal was undeniable, a quiet authority that made even the loudest spectators feel small in comparison. Marcus's pride had been replaced by reflection. For the first time in his life, he felt truly humbled. The older trainers, veterans of countless fights and tournaments, gathered near Marcus. One of them, a seasoned coach with streaks of gray in his hair, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Son," he said quietly, "you just faced more than skill. You faced mastery. Remember this moment, it's a lesson that goes far beyond the ring." Marcus nodded slowly, words failing him. Pride and ego had carried him far in life. But in that single sparring session, they had been stripped away. He could feel every muscle still tense, every heartbeat echoing, not from exertion alone but from the recognition of how far he had yet to go. Seagal paused at the gym entrance and turned slightly, just enough for the room to feel the weight of his presence once more. "Marcus," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Today was a lesson in awareness, control, and humility. Do not mistake this for humiliation. Every fighter, every student, and every person here will one day face someone who challenges them in ways they do not expect. The way you respond defines your true strength." Marcus's voice cracked as he finally spoke. I understand, sir. I've never felt anything like this. I've trained for years, fought countless opponents, and I've never realized strength isn't just about winning fights. It's about knowing when to move, when to pause, and how to respect the craft and the people around you." A subtle nod from Seagal acknowledged Marcus's words. The young champion's face showed a mixture of relief and newfound determination. This was not a defeat. It was a transformation. The arrogance that had once defined him was replaced with a hunger to learn, to grow, and to truly understand what it meant to be a master of his craft. The executives stepped forward, distributing documents and explaining their vision for the gym and the MMA Federation. They emphasized mentorship, discipline, and respect, values Seagal had always embodied. Trainers and staff listened closely, realizing that the shift in energy was not temporary. This was a new chapter for the entire institution. Marcus, still seated, glanced around at the gym staff. He saw the respect they now had for him not as the invincible champion he once was, but as someone who had been humbled and was willing to learn. The veteran trainers approached him one by one, offering advice, encouragement, and words of wisdom. Even the youngest students in the gym looked at him differently, seeing that even the strongest could be taught a lesson in humility. Seagal finally began to walk out, the soft click of his sneakers on the gym floor echoing through the room. Marcus stood, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the experience settling into him. He raised his gaze to the calm figure leaving the gym and silently vowed to never underestimate anyone again. As Seagal reached the doors, he paused one last time. "Remember this, Marcus," he said. "The measure of strength is not in the victories you collect, but in the respect you earn and the mastery you seek. True power is silent. True respect is earned, not demanded." The gym erupted into applause, not for the fight, not for a knockout, but for the lesson, the transformation, and the wisdom imparted. Phones recorded the moment, capturing Marcus's expression, the reactions of the staff, and the quiet departure of the master who had changed everything in a single session. Marcus finally lowered his head, exhaling slowly. He felt something shift inside him, a clarity, a renewed purpose. From this day forward, he would train differently, he would fight differently, and, most importantly, he would respect the craft, his opponents, and himself in ways he never had before. The older trainer placed a hand on his shoulder once more. "You've learned something today, Marcus. Not just about fighting, but about life. Carry it with you. Don't forget this moment. Marcus nodded again. A silent promise to himself and to the world. The gym, once filled with ego and noise, had now become a place of learning, respect, and mastery. A transformation as profound as the one Marcus had just experienced, and as the crowd slowly dispersed, whispering and sharing videos of the legendary sparring session, everyone knew one thing for certain. This was a day they would never forget, a lesson that would echo far beyond the gym walls, and a moment that had redefined what it meant to be truly strong. The gym had quieted down, but the energy in the room was different now, heavier, more reflective. What had begun as a routine sparring session had transformed into a lesson that no one present would ever forget. Marcus, the Titan, Hayes, once brimming with arrogance, now stood with a humility that radiated from every pore. His fists were no longer raised in pride, but relaxed at his sides, his shoulders no longer tense with the weight of ego. He had learned something far more important than winning a fight. Seagal, calm and composed as ever, had left the mat and walked toward the exit, leaving behind a silence filled not with confusion, but with understanding. The crowd, trainers, and students still whispered among themselves, trying to process the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Phones recorded, flashes popped, and yet the moment wasn't about spectacle. It was about mastery, control, awareness. The older trainers exchanged knowing glances, nodding subtly to each other. "This is a lesson in life, not just in fighting," one said. "Strength without respect is meaningless. Ego will always find its limit. Humility, patience, and awareness, those are eternal." Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady, though still tinged with awe. "I thought I understood strength. I thought power meant dominance, speed, and victory. But today I realized I had it all wrong. Strength isn't just about how hard you hit or how fast you move. True power lies in control, patience, and knowing when to act." The students in the gym watched him intently, some nodding in agreement, others whispering their own reflections. Marcus had become a living example of the lesson Seagal had imparted. The young fighters, who had looked up to him for his victories, now had something far more valuable. A glimpse into what mastery truly meant. Seagal's words echoed in the minds of everyone present, lingering like a mantra. True power is silent. True respect is earned. It wasn't a statement of dominance. It was a truth that transcended the fight, the gym, and even martial arts itself. Respect, awareness, and humility were the pillars of mastery, and no amount of ego, arrogance, or raw strength could replace them. The executives who had accompanied Seagal began reviewing the gym's operations, emphasizing mentorship and discipline. But the real transformation had already happened inside the hearts and minds of the fighters, trainers, and students. Marcus had become more than a champion. He had become a student of life, a man who understood that lessons often come from unexpected places and in unexpected forms. As the crowd started to disperse, Marcus stayed on the mat for a moment, reflecting on the day. He thought of the punches he had thrown, the strikes that hadn't landed as intended, and the calm presence that had redirected every ounce of his energy. For years, he had trained to win, to dominate, to conquer. And yet, in a single sparring session, he had learned that winning without understanding was hollow, fleeting, and meaningless. Seagal had left behind more than a memory. He had left behind a standard of mastery, calm, and respect that would influence every fighter who had witnessed the event. Phones recorded it all. Clips would be shared online, and stories would be told countless times. But the real impact was invisible, etched in the minds of those who had been there to see it firsthand. Marcus stood up, looking around at the gym, the staff, and the students. He raised his hand slightly, a subtle nod to everyone who had witnessed the lesson. "This isn't just about fighting," he said quietly, yet clearly, his voice carrying across the room. "It's about how we live, how we act, and how we respect the people around us. Humility is strength, awareness is power, and respect is everything." The crowd erupted not with cheers for victory, but with applause for wisdom. Phones recorded, comments were typed, and social media clips began circulating instantly. But the applause wasn't just for Marcus. It was for the lesson, for Seagal's presence, and for the reminder that true mastery, whether in martial arts or life, comes from calm, awareness, and respect. The gym slowly emptied, but the lesson lingered. Marcus walked out last, carrying the weight of humility and understanding with him, the story of the day, of the lesson, and of the master, who had transformed everyone present, would live on far longer than any fight, knockout, or trophy. And for everyone watching, whether in the gym or online, one truth remained clear. Respect is the real measure of strength. Humility is the true power, and mastery comes not from dominance, but from awareness. Type respect in the comments if you believe humility is stronger than ego. And tell me where you're watching from. I want to honor every person who values true strength.